And welcome to Nerd Stalker. I am Adolfo Ferranda with my legendary co-host.
Greg Valoria, aka Social Greg. Hey, how's it going, Adolfo? Long
Great,
time.
brother. Great. Yeah. Just collecting revenues and residuals from inventing podcasting and vlogging.
Oh yeah, that's right. I forgot.
Just
You
like
you
Al Gore.
invested podcasting and vlogging.
Yes, I invented it myself. My God, look at us.
Single-handedly.
We look 10 years younger already.
That's you and Al Gore.
That's right, brother.
That's
Happy
right.
holidays. We're recording this
Yeah.
in December, right around the corner from Christmas time or whatever holiday you celebrate in the winter.
That's right. Yeah, it's 3 o'clock. Wow, 6 o'clock back east. Nice.
Nice, dude.
Yeah, we're right on NBC.
Yeah.
NBC
Yeah, time
nightly.
shifting.
Looks like we're gonna usurp their subscribership tonight.
So I got a dope tree in my house, and it's all good. How about you, man?
Oh, no,
Good stuff.
I'm really minimalist, man. You know,
Nice.
like Charlie Brown Christmas tree and the whole works.
I like it, man. So what have you been up to anyways? It's been a while.
Yeah, it's been a while. Wow, I've been focused on a lot of video, and so it just project after project now. So
Yeah, I hear you.
and then I just in working my market research job, so it's always kind of interesting.
Very cool. Very cool.
Yeah. What about you, man? I heard there's some changes there.
Changes
Huh?
with me. Yeah. So I am now in between things and trying to get my stuff right here.
Yes.
And yeah, getting out of the world of finance and into the world, the actual world itself. So yeah, I'm on the open path, open road, like so many of you out there. It's nice. Take a breather in between gigs and just think about how take an appreciation for things, take a step back, kind of sort of resetting myself and seeing where things go. It's an exciting time. It's an exciting time. A lot of change in the air for sure.
Yeah, well, I told you, I shared with you earlier that our friend Miles is kind of in the same boat, and I was just trying to encourage him to take the time to really kind of think about this, because the one thing you have is time, and whether you be a solopreneur or working for someone else, you do have time, so might as well make the best of it.
Yeah. So for you people out there, I mean, oh man, really, it's really important to do what you like. I learned that. I like to learn things the hard way myself. Let's put it like that. I like to try things, and I'm usually not good at them on the first go, and I just keep doing it and do it and do it until until I get it. I'm like one of those, how they say there's like visual learners and auditory learners and kinesthetic learners or whatever. I'm definitely one of those types. I actually have to be hands-on doing something in order to sort of pick it up. I can't just sit in a lecture and retain even 80% of something, because I'm not wired that way. And just listening to something, just listening to something itself doesn't do it too. Just looking at something and not hearing it, like reading or something, doesn't do it too, because my mind tends to drift. I actually have to be, very hands-on with whatever it may be in order to pick things up. So, yeah.
We were talking about that the other day, right? I mean, YouTube University is great, right? And they have a lot of people who do some really quality stuff, right? And, as well as other channels, but unless you actually put that to use, take that step, take that step forward to use it, it's really tough to retain that type of stuff, right?
Yeah. And a lot of people too, they're like, they're hands-on type of, there's a shortage, oddly enough, of service people or hands-on people, like your plumber, your tile layer, whatever, these specialty type of jobs. Who knows? I mean, the next thing could be like a laser cutter, whatever it may be, type of person or whatever, specialist or an engineer and that kind of thing, where they have to hands-on do this kind of thing. I don't know. Interesting to be exploring all these different things right now. I'm heavy into jujitsu right now again, falling back into it as a middle-aged white belt yet again.
Nice.
Actually getting hurt, but I love it. I'm spending as much time as I can, at the gym and on the mats.
How's that how's that feel for you?
Oh, it's great. It's great to come in as an older middle-aged person, I guess, if you will, and just have a different perspective because I have nothing to prove at all, right?
All
And
right.
there's no worry really about the other in terms of what other people think about you. Like so much when I was younger, I was so self-conscious and worried about what other people thought about me and stuff.
Of course.
And now it's a different thing. I know that I'm the turtle in this game, right? I'm just going to keep on going, keep on
The
going, keep on
turtle.
going,
Turtles are
and
good.
but on the downside of that, they say the turtle wins a race, sure, but he eventually gets there. But if the turtle gets hurt, it takes a long time for the turtle to sort of recover, as opposed to when you were younger, where you could recover really fast physically or however,
I think
especially
young
physically.
turtles definitely repair a lot faster than we do.
Yeah. Than the old turtles too. How about that?
Yeah.
Living on.
Well, that's good. I mean, the jujitsu and like any other kind of, I'd say, martial arts has kind of a discipline to it. If you decide to do it, it's all about you, right? It's up to you, right?
Yeah.
Right.
And a lot of people, they always tie their interests into life in general, their hobby or whatever. And you can always find correlations between life and whatever your passion is or your specific interest. I remember when I was heavy into poker, I saw correlations between poker and life itself and the things it taught you, like patience, picking your spots, you know what I mean, and strategy and things like that. Not getting emotional, and these type of things.
So do you feel you're in an interesting place to learn this new art?
Yeah. You know what? They always say that too, how what youth is wasted on the young, you know, and it's sort of how I feel now. Like, it's so stereotypical because I've heard this type of perspective. Uh, when I was younger, I would hear these middle-aged guys saying these things. Oh God, if I was only, however many years younger, and I've got a lot more patience now. I'm not distracted by all these other things like I was when I
Mm,
was younger.
mm.
Um, but and I've just hit that milestone. What about you,
Yeah.
Greg?
Yeah, I feel the same way. I mean, I've been able to learn film and video at a later age, and I just love it. Very passionate about it, and it taught me that, if you're passionate about something, you could do it.
Yeah,
I think it's just finding that one passion button. I was
yeah.
talking to Miles today about that, and I think there was a YouTube thing that was talking about creativity the other day, where these guys were like 1 mil sub YouTubers, right?
Right. Wow.
And they were talking about how to be creative almost every day, you
Mm,
know. And one guy was talking about how his passion eventually turned to a job, which then kind of turned into something else.
mm,
And he was missing that kind of fun again. So he had to kind of think about how would he go back to kind of get that fun back again of what was a passion hobby turned into a gig, which then turned into something that I wasn't passionate about
yeah,
anymore.
man. And
You
that's the
know,
thing, man. I mean, a lot of us are good at starting things and stopping things. You know what I
right,
mean? And other
right.
things. And a lot of people are that type of I don't know if you would call it entrepreneur, but someone who can start a company or start
Or
ideas
whatever.
really
Yeah,
well, and then they
yeah.
bounce on to the next thing. I always thought you had to be an end-to-end type of person, and
Mhm.
you really don't. I think there's specialty people at the which could be construed as VC or whatever, conceptual idea, storyboarding, whatever type, and then there's execution people, and then there's like your accountants and CFPs or uh, and chief financial officers, operationals people, that are really good at that. And then there's a lot of tail end people too, like production people or whatever, QA people that are on that. They're really good at that type of thing. And there's lots of different roles and places. And that's just a particular niche and generalization. But it's interesting to sort of be able to finally become aware or recognize where your strengths lie and more importantly, where they don't.
Yeah. I mean, I think when you're talking earlier, what hit me when you said something about, um, I think our egos get in the middle of that path to going towards that thing we want to do, because
Mhm.
it's difficult. I
Yeah.
mean, nothing's going to be easy, right?
Yeah.
And I think, I did that kind of solo piece on Facebook. I don't know if you caught that, about imperfection.
Yeah, that was great.
You know, and I think our egos don't allow us to have imperfections on our path on the way to getting somewhere. You know,
Absolutely.
we
Yeah.
get frustrated and we say, "Oh, shoot, I don't want to do this crap
Yeah.
anymore." You know,
Or
but
conversely, you don't even start, right?
oh,
Because you don't
conversely,
have
don't
the
even
perfect
start.
plan. You don't have the perfect plan to start, or you don't have the perfect skill set to start.
Yeah.
Think in your head.
Yeah, it was funny. I got to share a story with you. There's a entrepreneur. Sorry, I was rubbing over the mic there, but there was an entrepreneur. I'm continuing to help, and we talked weekly. And he was like kind of like you. He switched over. He sold his. He like had a Udemy class in Japan that was like number 3 or something like that. It was
Incredible.
like,
Yeah, incredible.
it's almost kind of like website for dummies.
Yeah.
Type
And
of
just,
class, right?
to put it into context for people, if you have a number 3 Udemy class in a country, even like Japan, we're talking like pretty substantial numbers and good money.
Yeah, absolutely. And he decided to sell it off, and then he said, "Greg, I don't know what to do next." I said, "Well, why don't you write down some ideas?" So like you, he spent a week. He came back to me. Well, I have 250 ideas, and I said, "Well, we need to kind of pare that down a little bit." So we were going back and forth for a couple of weeks, and then I said, "Well, I've been listening to you, Masa, for the last couple months. It seems like you get really turned on when you're helping people. So maybe find out those 250 ideas.
Yeah.
If you could actually find some things in there that'll help people." He got it down to 6 eventually.
Yeah.
And that was a lot more manageable.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
That's a great piece of advice.
and I think what he did was he finally picked one, and he knew the other 5 could probably be relevant later on. So like if he flipped one, he could go to number 2, 3, 4, or 5 later. So it was always good. So I said, yeah, that sounds good. And so he's pursuing that now. And him and his wife moved out of Japan and living on an island right now.
Wow,
Yeah.
that's amazing.
Yeah, trying to do their thing now.
Living the dream, man.
Yeah, it's interesting story, a really interesting story, and they're really trying to do something to help people. So I think the next year I'll tell you guys more about that once the paint dries on that. But that's pretty cool. But anyway, getting back to finding your place in life, I think that's really kind of like we're talking about, right? Or finding the next place in life, or whatever you want to look at it. I think before I got involved with you, Adolfo, I used to work for a very big company. About 15,000 people, and I was just working at a division of that, and I was a product manager for that at one time. Had different jobs, but it was interesting. After I got out of that, and I started to do these little smaller gigs, it was very apparent to me what the golden handcuffs meant. And you and I were talking about this when you were leaving, and sometimes you sit there and go like, I'm pretty comfortable. I have a family, got some mouths to feed. They're paying me well. They may be putting a corn cob up my ass every day, but they're paying me real well, so I'll just put up with it. And I give my friends credit who are still there at that company. They still continue to do it. I don't know if they're happy, but they still continue to do it, and more power to them. I just can't imagine doing that anymore.
Yeah, I think it is that type of experience is a lesson, right? I mean, people learn from those type of experiences, what they want in life, and obviously one of the most important things is what you don't want in life. And I also really liked your advice to that gentleman, is because one of the things that I've been doing is I created a mind map of like, just dream jobs or something like that. So I wrote like dream companies to work for, like you said, your why, type of thing. If you can find that, that's great. So like, do you want to like build community? Do you want to help people? Like in your example, that type of thing. I think that can help you sort of begin the spark and start exploring and experimenting, because I think that's a really important thing to do. And also when you're middle-aged too, it's a real common statistic. I think they say by middle age, you've like changed jobs several times. And at this age, you do typically change jobs. and careers, sometimes like a complete 90-degree turns. I don't know. I mean, Greg, did you see yourself when you were starting out, working in the behind a camera or any, that type of thing? I
It's
mean,
funny.
what a transition, right?
I spent 20 years in the semiconductor industry, right? And this is, I mean, we're talking about making the chips that we're using to do this thing, right?
Right.
Working with the Intels, AMDs, TSMCs of the world, right? And when I got out of school, I just said, I'm just gonna. I didn't even know what semiconductors were, quite frankly, and I just blindly went into it, and it turned out to be a 20-year gig, right? And then suddenly, when you reach a certain level, like middle management, which the advice is never get into middle management, right? Is that suddenly, after getting out of that thing, I realized that kind of like, what am I going to do next, right? But I think some of it is faith. You have to have faith in knowing that there's going to be something, and just be patient with it. And it took me 9 months after I was laid off to find something, and it turned up being that B-Tracks job that I got. Right.
Yeah.
And that's when social media was kind of hitting its ramp, right?
Crescendoing. You're right.
Right. And then that led to meeting Miles and you at SF New Tech. And then that led to, that led to me streaming SF New Tech events live.
Right.
And that led to me thinking, wow, this camera stuff's kind of cool, right?
Right.
And that led me to my mentor, who's a cinematographer, teaching me about doing filming. I mean, it's just, but I couldn't script that. I mean, there's all the scripts in the world. I would never be able to see that. So
how serendipitous, right? I mean, you just sort of like hitting, bouncing into all these things.
And it's just. But that's life, I just realized that I just had to have faith that there's going to be these ebb and flows in life along your path, and you just have to have the positive attitude that, as long as you're keeping moving forward, you'll find that sweet spot eventually, whatever that is,
But you also have to take that risk. I mean, you also said yes to these things. And or you even initiated some things like, hey, how about you pitch? How about I do this?
Right.
Or something like that. So I mean, there is some semblance of you diving off the board into the unknown.
Yeah. I mean, I think it's got to the point now where I think I could probably go solo next year, which I'm making that transition that way. And it's scary. There's a great movie I want all of you to watch. I was telling Adolfo about that the other day.
This movie, this guy's got to marry this movie.
Yeah, I got to marry this. So watch Free Solo. It's about that guy climbing up El Capitan without a rope. And that's what it is. It feels like when you're going off to do something new, whether it's a new business or a new job or a new adventure. That's what it feels like. You don't have this rope. And we're all used to, like I was telling you earlier, my friends at the big company, they're used to the rope. Right. The golden handcuffs, the rope, right? I mean, if I can't grab onto that after I let go, I feel uncomfortable. But I think you're right, Adolfo. You have to feel a little bit uncomfortable to move somewhere.
I think as you stated there, I used to hear this too in various companies in my past experience, and people often saying, well, it's a secure place. It's a secure job, and it's a safe job. It's this position secure. We'll be, that type of thing. And I think really nowadays that's a really kind of an illusion. And that's a narrative that's been sold to people, especially now. You see the market swings, big time changes and innovation happening at a pace that's just mind-boggling. It really is. And the rise of all these, as you said, solopreneurs, entrepreneurs, especially these solopreneurs, people working remotely everywhere. But side hustle being this phrase that everyone uses on a regular basis now. Security is an illusion. And I think being open and nimble and to opportunities and saying yes and experimenting and taking chances and learning constantly is of the utmost importance.
No, I think that's a great thing you just said is opportunities, right? And opportunities are one of those things where, at the I'm into Buddhism, so I'm going to share a little bit of this, and I'm going to get too deep into this. But there's two schools of thought where you meditate about something, and that's kind of this one world, but then you have to put it into action, which is another world. So you have to somehow take those thoughts that are kind of like swimming in your head and then put them into action. And that's something that's emphasized a lot in the Buddhist teachings is not only contemplation but action. And we could I could contemplate myself to death. I mean, I used to contemplate myself to death. I used to go in this circle. I could do this and do this, and I go back to A again, and I go back to B, and then I go back to A again and go to B. I mean, but there was no action behind it. And I think that what you said earlier really made me think about action. Action's the really key spot. Even take a little step. I think that's another thing we convince ourselves is that this transition has to be smooth.
Great point.
It has to be really smooth, this man. So I'm going to plan out that transition, and until it's smooth, man, it's going to get, well, guess what? It's never going to be smooth.
Right. Or it's going to be, as you mentioned, or it's, you think in your head, it's going to be one big move, one giant leap, right? Whereas like I always tell my daughter, this is me just throwing sort of these anecdotes out her, is like, how do you eat the elephant, right? One bite at a time. And that's sort of how, you can transition or move on to other points in life or take action. Is even the gym is always the example, right? Of like, don't go to the P90X class or your hardcore, cardio class or super hardcore spin class. Maybe show up one day a week for 20 minutes, and do a light little thing, stretching, maybe a little bit of lifting or pushing, of pulling of something, and then leave.
Yeah.
And then come back maybe the following week and then shoot for 2 days, and then the following week and maybe every other day. And maybe you hurt yourself and you need to take a week off because there's been a setback, and
right.
Things slowly, you got to ease. I don't think you have to, but I think an approach that's been successful for me is to take these baby steps. And it sucks because, especially when you're young, man, you just want to sprint. You want to sprint all the way. You want to run right up the ladder. You think you deserve it all, and all this stuff. And boy, it's a tough thing, patience, right?
Oh man. Well, I think that's one thing that we, in our wisdom, right? The wisdom we gain in our
we're so wise.
I know, I tell you, we're wise guys. We're the wisest guys on the internet. But I think the wisdom is something that really helps me to this day. I think as my son was growing up, I'd look at that, and like there were times where I just had to bite my tongue because like I knew that if he didn't experience some kind of mistake or some kind of thing, he wouldn't learn. So I just kind of like, I mean, you're not going to let him get killed, of course, but I mean, if he was really as passionate about something, and I kind of know, this can be good, but I said, well, what the harm, let him try it. And if he didn't succeed, then he kind of learned something from that, right?
Yeah. And they're so lucky now because they had the internet. They grew up with the internet, and if they know how to YouTube or Google or Bing something, boy, you can come in at one heck of an advantage at whatever you're approaching, right?
Oh yeah, that first job after I got out of corporate life, right, went into this web agency, right, cross-cultural web agency. I worked on procedure. I mean, I worked from procedures. Right. I mean, it was a big ass company, right?
Documentation
there was a procedure for everything.
Yeah.
Right. And so I was taken aback the first time my president said, "Oh, just Google it. Don't worry about
it." Wow.
Huh?
That's progressive.
Right. Right.
Yeah,
right. You're right. I mean, it's
conservative
kind of like,
company.
he wasn't worried about like, oh yeah, just freaking Google it. You'll find the
Wow.
answer there. And like it was so uncomfortable for me
Mm-hmm.
to hear that
Mm-hmm.
because I'm so used to like looking up like, okay, well that's the process for that, so I'll just go do that or go ask somebody. He's really saying, oh yeah, just freaking Google it. It'll be faster.
Yeah, man. That's
And it's true
crazy.
even to this day. I mean, I think that none of us really have to know too many things as long as you could apply it. And that's the key part is applying it, right? We were talking earlier is that I could watch 10 videos, but if I can't apply it, then it's really worthless in a way, right? So
how do you see companies now being successful? Because they're used to all these old business models, like you said, of this command and control and all this procedural stuff, and it seems to be companies like that, they still exist, but they're being usurped in a way, right? By other companies that are doing things a bit differently. I know if you're a really small startup or something like that, you just can't operate that way. You just can't anymore.
no, I that's a great question. I talked to a friend at Facebook, and she's a product manager, and the conversation came up like, how did I haven't been in this corporate thing for a while, so how do you track action items? And she started laughing. I said, do you like have a spreadsheet and a database? Well, people just have to be accountable, Greg. That was her simple answer. I said, we write
treat people like grown-ups. What a novel concept, huh?
Yeah, we track. I mean, but we don't spend the next meeting tracking all the action items. You just have to be accountable, and that accountability will show up, she said, eventually. Right? I mean, it'll show up either you didn't do it or you didn't do it, which then caused another action not to happen, which then caused another action.
Yeah.
She said it's not going to be invisible.
Right.
Some actions are more important than others, of course, she said, but everyone in the room knows that if they're spending an hour of their time in a meeting, they know it's important and they're going to get something done. I mean, otherwise, why have the meeting? So,
right.
So that's kind of the interesting modern way of thinking, if you think about it, right? They don't have this taskmaster there, tracking all the little action items and making sure the schedule's online. It's really kind of almost this adaptive work style that they've created in these companies, right? Where day to day, there's going to be something that usurps a plan, I guess. So
you're right.
Right.
What did Eisenhower say? He said, planning is essential, but plans are garbage. Something to that extent.
Right.
Planning is essential. Yeah,
exactly. And the thing is that we only, we're not fortune tellers, so we can't see the future as well as we think we can, right?
Right.
So I think it's interesting how Facebook has this kind of adaptive. I mean, what you could call it agile. You could call it this agile methodology, but it was interesting to hear it from someone who's within that.
Yeah.
I mean, they're a big ass company now. I mean, and I was trying to figure out how do they do it, right? But
that's definitely one of my big wins of the year. Is I'm calling it agile everywhere now. I recorded something earlier too. Was one of my predictions. Agile is just going to be everywhere now. Now, whether depending on your methodology or flavor of agile is up to your particular company or group or department or whatever, or Scrum team or little agile team. But I think it's going to drift from IT departments. It actually already is into other business departments, just because it's such a winning, production boom now for not only startup companies, but for large enterprise and everyone now. That seems to be the way to go for now.
I think culturally, right? I think if someone's brought up that way, they'll be able to adapt more, right?
Yeah.
Right. So having our kids and people in colleges, that's another interesting thing. College is so rigid.
Yeah.
Right? And I was always trying to figure out how can they take that rigid structure and merge it into the outside world like they do, because it's like the kids coming out there are so used to this kind of rigid thing that
Yeah,
once they
yeah.
get out, I think some of them just like, oh my God,
Yeah, yeah. The
Yeah.
landscape moves so quickly. Yeah, I'm really wondering what's going to happen to the traditional college model. Just financially, it's so challenging now for these kids to come out of graduating with a couple 100,000 in debt, making a $40,000 job, a annual job if they're lucky. And
Totally.
people saying, well, the important thing is the contacts you make. Sure, networking could be important depending on how things go. A lot of companies still really put some value on that piece of paper when you get out of it too, but also sometimes there's a parentheses or commensurate experience, right, for that particular position. So the thing is, like, who are you going to hire? You're going to hire someone who can hit the ground running, or you're going to hire someone because they have a piece of paper that you're going to have to ramp up, assuming that there's been some sort of change or whatever to the particular job description or something like that
Yeah,
versus the graduate.
I think there's some jobs obviously that need expertise, right? I'm not going to be a surgeon by
Yeah.
looking at YouTube.
Right.
I'm not.
Yeah, lawyers, right? Well, I don't know. That's to be argued. You can learn law online now. Yeah,
The
for free.
AI is kind of going to be disrupting
True.
that, right? I mean, it's kind of like, especially if it's procedural, right?
Yeah, man.
Right. So the lawyers that will probably still exist are the ones that really give value back into the system, right? Is their expertise valuable enough to require them to exist?
Right.
That's going to be the interesting part. If it's procedural, like, anyway, just, I mean, why do you think Legal Zoom exists?
Right.
Right. And
So, Greg, what are your predictions? Do you have any predictions then of like things coming up for next year or for the anything of that extent?
that's interesting.
Or who you really appreciating now in terms of like business, what's happening, or things like that you'd like to highlight. I'm kind of putting you on the spot.
Oh yeah, that's okay. No, that's all right. I don't mind. I think there was something.
And who's vulnerable? You know what I mean? Who's vulnerable right now?
Yeah, I think I thought about the gig economy this morning. Actually, I saw an article or something like that. I think we're also going to repost it on Nerd Stalker. And some of the things is interesting is that I wonder, like, these service jobs, like, we at work we order from Caviar and DoorDash and all that stuff.
Right.
It really allows people to kind of, entry level kind of get in there and earn some money, right? Just like anything else. Or Upwork is another one for creatives, right? The person seemed to think that it's going to become a more and more crowded market because everyone could do this now, and it's so global,
right?
That I think it's even more. It can be more difficult, apparently, these gig economy jobs, because there's more people who can do it.
Yeah, especially what they would call the low end, right? Of these positions, and a lot of these people that I meet that are gig economy employees, they have typically two jobs, and it's become the norm, or two gigs, if you will. And one of the arguments I always hear these like ride sharing companies say is that this was never intended to be a full-time job, right? That's their out, right?
Yeah.
With these type of things. And it really is it's this trust economy now. This trust business model is what they're calling it, right? You get into a stranger's car and you trust that they'll, get you from point A to point whatever B. You trust that you're going to get food from these companies like DoorDash and people that you've mentioned, from point A to restaurant A to you, and all other matter. Look at the acquisition of TaskRabbit, right? And that was a gig economy company that got acquired by IKEA, I believe, purchased them.
Yeah, absolutely.
Some massive wins for this type of, what would have been like almost like a handyman type of, who wants to do the job type of company. It's incredible. These middlemen,
I think the other thing that hit me this week when I saw that Amazon was dumping Instacart, which is another gig economy type company. Right. And basically, I mean, because of, the Whole Foods acquisition, right? And so they're dumping them to just go directly with Amazon and that infrastructure, which makes sense probably. But it made me think about, how these gig economy jobs in markets that are kind of somewhat fluid, are going to exist or not exist. And, that's another thing that people have to do is adapt to something else. But that's what was interesting when I thought about this, is that, we're just at the beginning of all this. So, Instacart, there are going to be Instacarts in the future and now that are going to just no longer exist in 5 years. And, what do those people go do? Well, they do the next Instacart, or they go do, DoorDash, or they do something. I don't know. They walk dogs,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah, like all that dogvacay.com and all that stuff. Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Another trend that I've seen that seems to have sort of peaked out are subscriptions, right? So like whether it's like especially application type subscriptions, app subscriptions too, all service subscriptions. It seems like people are really subscribed out, whether it's your traditional ones, obviously your cell phone and your TV, right? And TV seems to be dying off to something like a Netflix and an Amazon Prime, but especially a Netflix and a Hulu, if you will, seem to be the 500-pound gorilla in that space. Yeah. But then you're looking at things like Adobe now, right? They've made a killing on their subscription model, especially at the higher professional end. But now I'm seeing smaller apps sort of take their what used to be entry level type of customers away from them, whether we're talking like Pixelmator on the app side, or even GIMP on the open source side for free.
Yeah.
So I think people are really subscribed out. We're looking at Spotify for your music, or Apple Music, or Google, or maybe sometimes people have a combination of all these things. It really bites into their wallet. And I think now with the market changing the way it has been, I think there's more of a concern on that, and people reflecting on things of, do I really need to add a Notion subscription in addition to my Evernote subscription, or, all these other type of things? Do I really need OmniFocus when I can have Todoist for cheaper, or just use Apple Notes or Pages and just make a task list?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great example. I mean, I think I was really seriously considering something about my Dropbox subscription.
Yeah.
I was like, well, why don't I just add more money into my Drive account and just increase it that way, and then get rid of my, well, and that's an interesting thing, right? Because now X amount of years into my Dropbox, so I've collected, right? And now I have to transfer.
Yeah, man.
Right.
I know.
You're almost like stuck. I mean, that's one thing I thought about the other day of subscriptions. The Adobe model, I think that, on the film side, video side that I'm on, there's people talking out there just so pissed off, right? I mean, it's just kind of like they get out of school and now they have to go to this professional rate. Right. And now, these kids who are out of school can't afford the subscription, and their subscription goes out. They can't do any work anymore.
Right. I really think there's opportunity now again for, software developers and app developers to just put out not an evergreen app, but an app that can last for years. If you're not if you don't need to make a living off of this thing, if you're a developer or you have other products, you could do it, because Adobe did it. Adobe would have a version 4, let's say, and someone would keep it until version 7 sometimes, or version 6, you know what I mean? And then either purchase a new one or not, or whatever it may be. I think this, in conjunction with like hardware, look at phones. I mean, the iPhone now is $1,000 plus phone, and I'm having a really difficult time. In fact, I'm not even purchasing the new iPhone. I'm looking at 8s, iPhone 8s and used refurbished 10s maybe on eBay and things like that, because I simply cannot justify paying $1,000 for a phone. So I think a lot of people are being conscious of their budgets now, and I'm wondering if developers, I hear people advocating for the particular apps, and we need to make a living, and I understand that. I really do. And or in the larger side, Adobe, we have to answer to shareholders or whatever. I get that too. I get it. But there's a demand on the other side too, of people being really tapped out in terms of their wallets.
Yeah. No, I think like on the film side, I know that DaVinci Resolve, which is free. I mean, the entry level one. So they did a really smart thing. They said, okay, you could have our nonlinear editor for free.
Wow.
But if you go to enterprise, you have to pay for it. But if you want to learn how to use this, you could have it for free. And then when you're ready, you're a professional or whatever, you made a lot of enough money off of the free version and you're ready to graduate to the other one, then you could do that. So I thought that was kind of a neat thing they did. I mean, I was kind of like, wow, how are they going to do this? They just came along and of course, having a better product helps because then people talk about it more and then say, well, this is not a bad alternative. It's not perfect, but it's not a bad alternative, right? I mean, you still have to compete in the market and you still have to have something. But at the time, I was just thinking about that the other day when I was talking earlier about Canva, right? And I used to always figure out, I used to struggle as a social media manager. Okay, what's the banner size on a Facebook event picture versus a profile versus, I mean, it just drove me up the wall. I had to store that somewhere, or I had to find an article in, Social Media Examiner that updates it every year, right? But when you go to a Canva, all those templates are there already. So I just drop my picture, do my thing, download it, put it in there, and I'm done, right? I mean, and that's really what I used to do in Photoshop. Right. So I agree with you. I think there's these middleware, if you want to use that term. I don't know if that's kind of old, but I mean, there's these solutions that will, take the pain out of it and allow you to do that. And where Canva makes money is that, hey, we'll give you a couple pictures for free, but if you really want the primo pictures, you subscribe to us, which makes sense.
Interesting.
I get it.
So Greg, companies that are killing it right now and companies that are, doing questionable things. So ones that a few companies that I mentioned that I'm really seeing, and they're kind of obvious. The obvious one is Amazon, right? They can do pretty much whatever they want right now. It seems like they, of course, they have AWS, which is just, they own the cloud really, and they obviously have their online retail presence, which is destroying everyone, and in terms of competition. And now they're getting to the grocery space, as you've mentioned, right, with their Amazon Go stores and their and the Whole Foods acquisition. And then you're hearing rumblings of them. They want to disrupt the medical space, which is really fascinating because I think that is a space that is ripe for disruption because it is so terrible. The American medical system and health insurance system is a absolute disaster, and it should be criminal what they're doing to the American public, in my opinion. And then another company that's absolutely doing fantastic is Netflix too. The content they're producing is just remarkable right now, what they're doing. And I see no reason. I would be happy if I was just stuck with a Netflix subscription and nothing else in terms of content. I'd be a happy camper because their stuff is so remarkably good right now. And then another surprise, the dark horse who's come back from the dead is Microsoft. Their bar was set so low with Bomber that they had nowhere to go from up, is what I've said before in previous podcasts. Their new CEO, Satya, whatever his name is, I forget his name. But the new CEO, really, they're like, he's such a genius. And I'm like, well, really, all he had to do was what they weren't doing, really. And it turned it around, meaning they had to bring Office into the cloud, which they did. They needed to really provide a kick-ass cloud solution, which they did with Azure. And they pretty much shut out, and Google blew it in terms of dropping the ball there. So it's really a two-horse race, but really Amazon owns it at this point. They're the far ahead, but Microsoft is number two, and their hardware they put out is really nice. Their Surface has been fairly successful, I think. I think they're embracing open source to the extent they've had now of all companies. And oddly enough, I think the government breakup of the company has done nothing but good for it. So they've that's a company that's just remarkably on their way back right now, and they've been quietly doing this, and they're crushing it. Whereas I see their counterparts being a little more vulnerable, like Apple. I think they're kind of a one horse sort of show right now. If anything, God forbid, goes wrong with the iPhone, what are they going to do? You know?
Yeah, no, I agree with you. I think another one that after you were talking about Microsoft was Tesla, actually. After I rode in my friend's Tesla the other day, and I was going like, I get it now. And then I saw that interview of Elon on 60 Minutes the other day, right? And his philosophies, and I said, okay, I get it now. He's almost like daring everyone, right? He's saying that, yeah, I just want to make, I want the world to have better products. So I'm either going to make my better products or force the competition to make better products. And guess what? Now we have electric cars now, right? So I think if he didn't show up on the block, I think we were talking about 2030 for all electric cars.
Yeah.
Right.
Because now everyone's jumping in the game, man. Porsche is getting in the game. I think BMW mentioned one too. So, I mean, I think Tesla's, I don't know if they're far enough ahead, but we'll see, because those are some serious names. It's one thing if you're saying, Toyota's going to put out an all-electric Prius, and you don't get really thrilled about that. But when you start talking Porsche and BMW and Jaguar or whatever, these big names, if they really put out with a solid product, then I think Tesla really has something to worry about.
Oh yeah, and I think Elon is okay with that too. After watching his interview on 60 Minutes, it's almost kind of like you said, if he could force a market forward, and that's of course according to Elon. But if he could force a market forward, why not?
Yeah.
And if they make better products than he does, then it's his fault.
Right.
All right. I think he's really saying that, in some markets, like you were saying earlier in the medical space, you need to challenge it. Right. And if you don't challenge something, it'll never grow.
Right.
And that's a great way of looking at it, because I think that, like you said, there's a lot of industries there that are just stagnated.
Yeah, right. Higher education included. Yeah.
Yeah, higher education included. And so these Udemies now are like, okay. And then the more these companies could hire non-college grads, guess what the value has?
Right. Exactly, man. What are you actually going to pay for these things? Yeah. And there is a cachet, like you said, to having a Tesla too. Another company too, I think that's sort of in this weird state right now too, is Google. They're, unfortunately closing Google Plus down. So RIP Google Plus. And we've missed them, and Google Hangouts, right, which is only going to be like an enterprise solution, I think, now, and I'm sure they'll kill that off at some point too, which we use now, which is really unfortunate. It was such a help for us. It seems like Zoom seems to be the contemporary for it, the takeover, and Skype too. It's still running, chugging along, and that's Microsoft's product. And they're, like I mentioned before, their cloud solution has been. They're just not getting traction with it. I believe the lead of their cloud department left or was let go, and now I think they have someone new. They're still owning it. Gmail, Google Docs is still running strong. Google Search, I know they're having some issues with whether to go into China now and their internal employees type of situation, but that the Chinese situation is sort of impacting a lot of different industries right now. Do you have a take on that?
Yeah, I was looking up a really great channel for China news is Silicon Dragon.
Yeah.
She's really cool, actually. She really has some interesting perspectives. I met her at an event once way back. I forget one of these events that she was speaking at, and I always thought of her as kind of like a China fan person, fan person, right?
Right.
Just another. She told me her background. She was a media person, so she's just a reporter, right? She's just reporting on China news, right?
Yeah. It's a good niche. Yeah, it's a good.
Yeah, a great niche, right? But I think China. Yeah, we're messing. It's almost kind of like I always feel like we're messing with the tail of the dragon a little bit. It's going to come back and bite us. Especially what we're doing to with the sanctions and everything. And after all this, we're EM's laying off thousands of people. So but anyway, getting back to China, I think China has a really interesting model because I think they could take it or leave it almost. There's so many people that they're serving products to internally, right?
Well, they seem to have taken that model of let the Western tech startups come in, we'll steal their IP, or just blatantly copy the company and then provide our own solution.
Right. And
whether it was with their search solution or what they an Amazon, Baidu, whatever, and all these other companies. I think they even had an Uber sort of clone there that's taken over, and all these different things. So, like you said, yeah, why not? But that's the American way too. I mean, we've done that too.
It's free enterprise, right? I mean, the best products will win, right? And if all of us as consumers could get the best products at a cheaper price,
ideally, I mean, we can't forget about government help, government subsidies, and things like that.
Sure.
Yeah, I don't think there's free capitalism anywhere anymore, really. But
China subsidizes their companies a lot, don't they?
Yeah, like we do here with our farmers and God knows what. Yeah, you bet.
Yeah, we don't know how to exist by ourselves anymore in certain cases without government assistance. It almost was a shame because it's almost kind of made us kind of depend on it too much, right? So,
right.
And once it goes away, you're done. But I think China is going to become the biggest economy out there. I mean, it's just going to happen. Our egos telling us we don't want it to happen, but reality is going to happen. So, we got to figure out how to play ball. There's a lot of I've been kind of surprised. In the film area where I do a lot of stuff, the Chinese products are coming along in certain cases. Drones, even action cameras.
Yeah,
they're coming along. I've seen, I think now the first few Chinese DSLRs coming out, and I was going like, whoa,
if it can be manufactured, I mean, China can probably does it or can do it. I know a lot of I have a musician friend of all things, and I think we spoke about this before, saying that a lot of these guitar companies are really hurting right now because companies like Fender or whatever, is that the Chinese knockoffs have gotten so good that it's hard to justify paying a premium anymore for these name brands because the Chinese equivalent is just as good.
Absolutely. I don't doubt that. I started to look at, even auxiliary things that I use in my video work and I know this is made in China, but no, and then there's this Chinese brand that kind of comes along and said kind of looking at it like, whoa,
hey.
whoa, and I think that I mean, that was coming. I think writing on that wall, right? I mean, I think that I was laughing earlier when you were talking about Microsoft, and we were bashing on Microsoft in 2012 when we had this podcast, right?
Totally.
We were laughing at them with their phone. Remember the phone?
Yeah. Oh God, it was a disaster. Yeah. Boy, did they make the turnaround? Hey, the pendulum swings all the time. So speaking of things that flop for the year, let's say this year or whatever, trends that have not come to pass, I would say probably the biggest flop of the year, in my opinion, is virtual reality, VR. This is the promise that never came to be, and just has not caught on to any extent.
No, we have
your thoughts, Greg, on that.
Well, it's niche-y, right? Gaming is the only thing that, and I think everyone knew.
But gamers aren't even,
No, you're right. But
they're still in their traditional gaming console, which are kick-ass, and
yeah, but I think that was the only promise that was even close to being, close to being a VR reality, right? Right. The fact of the matter is, when I look at being a filmmaker, when you have all these cameras and the editing and the power it takes to edit all these cameras into a virtual reality, it's out of reach. So people who are people are looking at this like, okay, I'll do I do regular movies, HD movies, 4K movies, or do I do virtual reality? Yeah, and I think it's
an
simple,
easy decision. Easy decision.
because it's
Yeah,
just too costly to do
fascinating.
VR. And I
You
think
know,
that's
and
a
you heard these companies too, like there's Oculus obviously, but then there was so much buzz around Magic Leap was the company, so much buzz. It reminded me very much of the Segway. There was so much momentum, and that momentum you just feel like the VR momentum has just stopped or just slowed to like molasses right now, right?
it isn't the top of everyone's conversation anymore. I don't think VCs are really getting excited about it. If it's AI
Mm,
something, machine learning something,
mm.
a lot more excited about that than they are VR, man.
That's interesting. So data is still all the hotness, is what you think. So crypto, it was another thing. Cryptocurrency is another thing that I was big on for a while too. It just has not really come to pass. Um, I wish I would have sold at the 20,000 peak or 40,000 peak, or whatever it was. I know there's been like a 20% bump up right now,
It's about
but
4,000, something like that now for
it's
Bitcoin.
been tied pretty closely to the dollar, so no one's really seeing it as a hedge in any way. So its value is really being questioned.
Yeah.
Obviously, it's the fluidity of how you can use it is still a big lure, but you still need to be geeky. You still need to know how to do all this nerdy stuff in order to sort of make use of it. So I think these obstacles are just hindering it at this point. Perhaps it's still in its infancy. What do you think, Greg? You seen the same trend or what?
Yeah, the number of ICOs have really slowed
Mm.
down.
And that's another problem, ICOs. Yeah.
Yeah, I think with the ICOs, which are kind of driving some of this stuff.
Initial coin offerings is what
Yeah,
ICO stands for. Uh-huh.
yeah, and I think that a lot of people were considering doing their own coin or their coin based on Ethereum or coin based on Bitcoin,
Yeah.
but I think what has really killed it is the scammers.
Yeah. Yeah.
And that's really killed this kind of thing now. And
Mm.
and whenever you get a industry or product that has a lot of questions about it like that, and then when you see governments all over the place now trying to figure out how to regulate a quote unquote unregulated thing, right?
Yeah.
I just don't see that,
It's
but
interesting though. You do see a country, something like I believe Argentina or Venezuela, I believe, putting out their own coin, their own cryptocurrency. I guess that's a model of where it can and should work, right? When a country's in utter collapse and their economy, their currencies just went to shit, then yeah, maybe crypto makes sense there. Another item tying to that, which is still sort of interesting but hasn't really taken off, but I think has more legs in cryptocurrency, is the blockchain itself.
oh, absolutely.
And this notion of basically a big ledger online. There's a lot of really some nerdy usage of it, but it's like plumbing, so people aren't particularly interested in it. It's like sort of we get all these press releases about networking and wireless technology. Is really boring kind of stuff. And I think blockchain is one of those things where it could be implemented, and it probably will be implemented in some aspects, but I don't think there's going to be a resounding sort of like whatever web internet type of explosion where everyone's like, oh, this is the web, I can publish on the web now, kind of thing. Blockchain feels more sort of plumbing like. Your thoughts, Greg?
It's not sexy, right? I mean, but I think, I think I read the other day that like Twitter's considering that, or to make sure that they have authentic accounts. So makes some sense, I guess. If you're Adolfo Ferranda and this is instead of a verified Adolfo Ferranda account would be blockchain, right? So you're the only one that has access to it. So
that's right, brother.
It makes sense, but it is plumbing. It's kind of like, oh man, it's kind of like the IT isn't really as sexy anymore too, right?
Right.
The IT guys, they're going lower and lower in numbers, right?
What a great way to end the show. IT is not sexy anymore.
It hasn't been for a while, I
It
think.
hasn't been for a while.
Wow.
Well,
But yeah,
hey, man, wrapping things up, bro. I just want to say, happy holidays to you and to all our viewers and listeners out there. It's great to reconnect. And Greg, any final words, parting words?
no, but just
No. Okay.
no, but have a great New Year. Good luck to everyone. I hope some of these things we covered, from life stories to tech stories here today, kind of makes you think about where 2019 is going. But yeah, just keep on doing it, man, and good luck to you. And I wish you a lot of luck out there, guys. So.
All right, everyone. So thanks for watching Nerd Stalker, listening to Nerd Stalker. You can catch us at nerdstalker.com, Nerd Stalker TV on YouTube, at Nerd Stalker on Twitter, and all the places. Thanks so much for watching. Have a good one.